Everyone, thanks so much for joining me in my product-led summit session about building and scaling better customer experiences. One of the toughest challenges we face in SaaS is matching and continuing to match the high expectations of our customers as we scale our customer base, our team, our tools, our product, our tech, and obviously our brand. So today I'm going to be talking about how to better equip your team to build those effective customer experiences that are so critical to your SaaS's success. For software as a service businesses, relationships are baked into the business model. Of course, you could say that about lots of kinds of businesses. But for those built on a subscription model, like SaaS most often is, our ability to retain happy customers over time is everything. I didn't know it at the time, but this is exactly why I left my traditional web marketing career in the dust in 2009. My name is Georgiana, and I've been working with SaaS companies for a little over 10 years now. I've worked as a marketer for nearly twice as long as that. I've advised, taught, mentored, worked with almost 100 SaaS companies at this point, ranging from pre-launch startups to companies of 80 million in ARR. For 5 of the years of the last 10, I led marketing at Unbounce, first as director and eventually as VP. It was during a trip to San Francisco in early 2013 with our director of customer success, where we had the opportunity to visit the Airbnb office there. A friend of mine whose startup had recently been acquired by Airbnb invited a few of us to their open house Beer Friday, and he gave us a tour of the office. Now, if you've never been, it can be quite the sight. So their meeting rooms are designed to look like some of their most popular and crazy rentals, and this is me on the balcony in one of them. It was pretty impressive and very polished until we went downstairs. So he took us down to where the product and engineering teams worked, and it was all open concept, of course. And I remember thinking, wow, it's super messy down here compared to upstairs, that is. And we weren't really supposed to be down there, so we didn't stay for long. But as we were headed back up the stairs, I noticed a lineup of sheets of paper, sort of scotch taped to the wall. It was a straight line of about 10 or so sheets of paper, all with what appeared to be their customer journey stages. And if you think about it, the Airbnb customer journey is a decently long one. First, you need to become aware that Airbnb is even a thing. You need to find and book a place. And then, of course, you need to take your trip. But the customer journey doesn't end there, right? Airbnb goes on to encourage those who rent to then be hosts and then be successful at hosting. Anyways, 10 stages, it's pretty long. Basically, this thing went way beyond the typical marketing funnel. The top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel that we're so accustomed to seeing. It also went much further than the buying stages that we were looking at the time, right? So this awareness, consideration, purchase. And I even remember when Dave McClure introduced the Pirate Metrics model to a small group of us at a startup event in 2011. But again, this was totally different. So the level of depth each stage went into, in this case, went way beyond any of those models. They didn't have names like MQL or SQL or purchase. They were focused entirely on the customer reaching their goal, not Airbnb. They each captured not only what customers were doing, but also thinking, and they used an illustration of a customer for each one so that anybody looking at this thing could sort of instantly grasp where their customers were emotionally at each stage. And maybe the thing that got me the most excited of all was the fact that it was on the wall. And it was there for everyone to see day in and day out while they worked. I stared at it for a while, and our director of customer success and we sort of stood there looking at it, knowing full well that, like, yes, of course, we need to do something like this for our team and our customers as well. So we did, and we did it along with our head of product and co-founder, and we built this customer journey map for our customers and our team. And of course, it's long been reimagined a few times since then, of course, because this was like 6 years ago, but I remember it really well. It was a circle because our last stage, growth, was all about helping to amplify our best customers to attract new customers. That final stage was always central to my acquisition strategy, so I wanted to make sure that it was in there, of course. Now, obviously, that was true, that it was part of my strategy before this customer journey map existed, but I remember how much easier it made things for me once it did. So I no longer needed to explain it or to remind anyone. It was built into our strategy. Now, I'm not going to claim that it was because of this customer journey map that we went on to grow revenue 900% in the next 2 years, but I will say that it became a central tool in the way that we operated as a company. So we were constantly referencing customer stages, we reorganized teams around it. It really became part of our DNA. So you might be thinking, all right, that's very nice for Airbnb or Unbounce, but I don't have time for this and I've got bigger fires to put out. But do you really? Your SaaS's success is so dependent on your ability to provide the best customer experience as cost effectively as possible and over time. And you can't do that without building a deep understanding of your customers, obviously, like qualitative and quantitative research. And then, of course, operationalizing that understanding, meaning that getting what's in your head into the hands of others and building a team around that understanding. But as you grow, you'll also look to lower the cost to acquire a customer. So acquiring more customers using fewer resources, like using a lower touch sales process, for example, which sets you up to scale. So where do we get tripped up with this? Why do we have such a hard time prioritizing building this holistic view of our customer experience if we understand how valuable this is? Well, I'll tell you why. For one, it's our massive hard-on for acquisition. I know investors need to see promise here. Don't get me wrong. I understand the hype. Believe me, I am a marketer, but our obsession with acquisition leaves too much on the table. A ProfitWell study of 6,452 SaaS companies in 2018 found that expansion revenue only makes up 10% or less of monthly revenue when it should make up more like 20 or 30% or more. And you don't have to actually look too far to find out why. We simply invest our time and resources elsewhere. Over 1,400 SaaS founders and execs polled said they spend 75% of their time on acquisition. And we've heard it time and time again, it costs less to retain a customer than acquire a new one. This is sort of, just accepted as true and as fact. And in fact, this study found that improving retention and monetization has 2 to 4 times the impact than acquisition does on growth. And in fact, I think I've heard Patrick Campbell say that this is more like 4 to 8 times now. And we see examples like this one from ProdPad, who implemented a dead simple customer community using Slack. And it shouldn't surprise any of us that supporting our customers, continuing to actively nurture them post-acquisition, can have a massive impact on the health of our company. So 99% of their churn coming from the customers that they're not actively engaged with and marketing to. So let's talk about customer experience for a second. I like this definition. Customer experience is the sum totality of how customers engage with your company and brand, not just a snapshot in time, but throughout the entire arc of being a customer. Thank you, Adam Richardson. Customer experience is not new, but it's one of those things, kind of like brand, that even if you have no formalized strategy, and even if you've given it almost zero thought or concerted effort, you still have a customer experience. It may be good or bad, but the very fact that you have customers and that they interact with you means that they have an experience with you and your brand. So it stands to reason that since SaaS is not an acquisition or transactional business, it's a relationship business. And in order to be successful, we need to optimize the entire relationship. From seeing your logo for the first time to screaming your name from the mountaintops. All right, so let's talk about these customers then, these customers that you know so well. Hopefully you fare better than this. Thank you again, Patrick Campbell. He depressingly admitted a few months ago that he found that 7 of 10 SaaS companies are speaking to fewer than 10 prospects or customers per month in a non-sales and research capacity, and that this ratio gets worse as companies get bigger. Also, how is your data doing these days? Ironically, most SaaS companies who you'd think would have more access to data than most types of businesses rarely have reliable user data. And just as rare are those that can actually put useful data into the hands of customer-facing teams. So only 7% of marketers surveyed report that they are currently effectively able to deliver real-time data-driven marketing. That is 7% according to the CMO Council. So we know how to measure acquisition, but if you're a product manager, how confident do you feel in the way that your company is currently measuring adoption, engagement, or loyalty of your best fit customers? I cannot tell you how many companies I've worked with that have no holistic and meaningful measurement of product engagement. Okay, so how do we solve for this? Building an understanding of your customers while building empathy for your customers for your entire team. And we have tons of tools at our disposal to do this. Despite the abysmal stats I just shared, customer research is super popular these days. People far smarter than I am are talking about all kinds of these things all the time, and there's lots of places to learn about this. So there's the quantitative research we can be doing, like analytics and customer data and NPS. There's qualitative work to be doing, right? Like our support records or customer advisory boards, interviews. And we can be doing all kinds of other stuff as well, like breaking our customers into segments or jobs to be done and personas or archetypes. Now, I'm not saying that you have to run out and do all of this right now, but you do need to be baking customer understanding and therefore work like this into the everyday lives of your team. Now, I'm not telling you anything new, but the point here is that this is all to uncover the kind of experience your customers need and expect during that entire customer relationship with you. So when you start to understand your customers, because you're doing all this incredibly valuable customer development and research work, the next piece of the equation, it would stand to reason, is you. So what kind of customer experience will you provide? What are you uniquely qualified to do? You might say, well, I have great people who understand my business, or I really understand my business, or, we offer the best customer service there is, and my sales team is top notch, or our tech support people are highly qualified. The problem with all of this is that you can't really afford to rely on only your amazing sales or CS teams to carry you across the finish line anymore. So David Skock has been talking about this for years, and recently at SaaS Talk in October, he came flat out and said that in order to keep the cost of acquisition down, you need to simplify the sales process. And in no uncertain terms, he lays out the math for why SaaS companies should do everything they can to remove the human touch from sales and onboarding. And I happen to agree, and so does Gartner. So Gartner's predicting that by 2020, a customer will manage 85% of the relationship with an enterprise without interacting with a human. Pretty dramatic number. Also, customer expectations are at a high, and more than ever, customers are expecting to be able to serve themselves without needing to reach out for and wait for help. Zendesk commissioned a study of 7,000 consumers that found that more than half think it's important for them to be able to resolve their own problems rather than having to rely on customer service reps. And this number rises to 60% among those aged 18 to 34. Do you have any 18 to 34-year-olds in your target market? You'd better be prepared to get out of their way. And this is not an easy thing to do. How is your business going to take the better part of relationships, something intrinsically high touch, and make them self-serve or one-to-many, which isn't something that's intrinsically low touch? The SaaS business model is based on the relationships we build with our customers. We all know this well. But as you grow, if that relationship, that intimate understanding of customers and your brand that lives inside your head or the heads of a select few team members, if that isn't disseminated into something meaningful that evokes the same amount of intimate understanding for your team, you're cooked. You can't be everything to everyone for long. If you're the linchpin holding everything together right now, that might be okay for the moment, but what about your team in 6 months? What about the team you'll have in a year from now? Again, one of the biggest challenges SaaS companies face is continuing to match the high expectations of your customers as you scale. So do the people on your team have what they need to build effective customer experiences? Can they do this autonomously without relying on you? Regardless of your target market, whether it's B2C, SMB, mid-market, or enterprise, your entire organization needs to work together like a well-oiled machine. As teams grow, it's easy to lose touch with why we're doing the work we do every day. Understanding your customers is a huge part of that, but the flip side of that coin is you. What does your company stand for? What's the longer term business strategy? What's your company vision or your golden circle? The what you do, how you do it, why you do it. You may scoff and say, my team gets it, the exec team gets it, we get it. But when was the last time you updated your brand guide for your team to see? Or do you even have one? You can't afford to leave this stuff up to chance anymore. You can't assume that the rest of your team sees your customers or your brand in the same way that you do. So how do we do this? Well, just like with customer understanding, we have amazing tools at our disposal. We're all familiar with these, of course. The problem usually is that we spend time here when we're in the mood, and then we feel great and we throw our core values on the wall and then we walk away from them. We almost never take the steps needed to truly make these tools valuable, to follow through on what these things mean for our customers and the experiences we want to create for them. All of these things will help us craft the kind of customer experience we want to provide our customers with. The opportunity that most companies miss is that while you're building this understanding of your customers and creating more clarity around the kinds of customer experiences you want to provide them, there's this gold mine right under your nose. It's at this intersection that you can begin to uncover your customers' success milestones in their relationship with you. Remember Airbnb? They had something like 10. Maybe it wasn't 10, maybe it was 8, but it's not important. The point is that you may have 5 or 6 or 8. There is this wonderfully rich customer insight and brand work that you've done, and you can turn it into something that your team can run with. So let's take for a second what I'm not talking about. When we step back and look at our customers' relationship with us, we most often find that we're thinking and talking about our customers according to transactional moments. And it's easy to fall into this trap too, especially when we use tools like marketing and sales automation software that have these built-in funnel stages that they throw our customers into, and everybody else's for that matter. Stages like user, lead, MQL, SQL, payment. In some cases, companies haven't even defined what MQL means. And if they have, it's only the marketing team who knows what it means to become marketing qualified. Try asking somebody in support or product to define what makes someone an MQL at your company. Who the hell can attach themselves in any meaningful way to an acronym like that anyway? And there's also tools like Dave McClure's Pirate Metrics. But what's wrong here, again, is that we're focused on the value to the business, not the value to the customer. And this is true of most frameworks. More frameworks, right? I'm not a fan of the funnel, obviously. I mean, I did start a company and call it Forget the Funnel after all. And while I'm a fan of Brian Halligan's Flywheel, since it's so much more focused on growth than most of these, I'm still left feeling like they don't go far enough. These frameworks aren't specific enough. They're not reflective of anything we know about our customers or our business. All right, so let's now try to envision what this thing might look like. I say might because when looking at this, I kind of want you to ignore the number of stages, the phases, and the naming convention. This isn't meant to reflect what your customer experience map might look like. But imagine how much more empathy and understanding is created for your team when you're using tools to describe your customer rather than things like entered payment source. We're using names like engage or explore, consider. It may sound silly or trivial at first, but what you call these stages of your customer's relationship with you matters. Words matter. When we flip the meaning of these stages away from transactional moments and vague buckets of customers to something directly related to our customers' success, we're having a much more interesting conversation. Think of how much more meaningful it could be and what a huge impact on how everyone on your company relates to your customers when they're looking at phases and stages like this. So let's look at a couple of examples of customer experience maps. This is an example of a client of mine, bus.com. This is one of 4 customer experiences that they optimize for, and they've got 9 stages. I love this Smithsonian example since it doesn't assume a linear path, which in this case is like literally a path, and they've got about 8 stages. This one from Blue Latitude, while maybe a little bit less straightforward than the others, still has 4 distinct milestones and lots of details about outside influences, for example. And then there's this one from Sunny Side Up, which is one of my favorites. Not because it's the sexiest in the world, it definitely isn't, but it's really straightforward and easy to understand and pull value from, which is the whole point. In an instant, even people who are new to the company can get a sense of their customer's mindset at any given stage of their relationship. This is the kind of customer journey map that is achievable with only a couple of weeks' work. Every company can do this. So, talking a little bit about the process for building one of these things in your team, I love to use this. This is Damien Newman's sort of design squiggle, where he created it to show his clients what the creative process is like for him with his design process, right? Chaotic and unpredictable at the start, and then later settling into consistent focus concept. And the process for customer experience mapping can feel kind of like this. It's messy to begin with, but it gets easier as you go. So the first thing we want to do is define success milestones. To identify your customer's milestones, it's helpful to imagine what your customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. You're uncovering what your customer must achieve or overcome in their relationship with you, from the first time they hear your name to becoming a happily paying customer, expanding their usage, and singing your praises. So yes, you'll need a deep understanding of your customers to do this, since identifying these success milestones is pretty well the hardest part of the customer experience mapping process. It's also the riskiest to mess up, since if a milestone is overlooked or left out, it will also be by your team when you move to sort of implement this thing at scale. So to make sure that we can identify, name, and eventually measure these milestones, we need to look at what our customers are doing, of course, like I said, but more importantly than that, we need to look for the thinking and the feeling. So we need to get into their head and find out what our customers' motivations, objections, and influences are. Tools like personas and especially jobs to be done is really helpful here, because they'll help you dive deeper into your customers' motivations and desired outcomes. A good example of this is surveying customers soon after they've become engaged to ask how and when they knew that your solution was right for them. And this can inform, how you help customers evaluate your product. But again, you're not going to stop there. Lean on your customer research here to uncover motivations to look for a solution like yours, all the way to wanting to introduce your product to a colleague, for instance. You'll also obviously have to contend with objections, from obstacles potential customers hit on your website, which you could learn through web surveys and polls, let's say, but also objections for every stage of their relationship. So why customers might leave your website, fail to onboard, go dark after a few hot days of activities, or not renew after months or years of being a customer. Additionally, you'll need to consider influencers in your customer's life, and they come in many forms. I'm talking about the things, most often people, that can bring your customer's relationship with you to this screeching halt, like stakeholders, technical buyers, or security limitations. If it sounds like a lot of work to get this all down and recorded and parsed, that's because it definitely is. But it's also critical to understanding their goals, which ultimately gives you yours. Which brings us to measurement. If the key performance indicators of your customer success milestones aren't defined meaningfully, then we'll lose sight of the forest for the trees. We tend to be obsessed with metrics and micro conversions, particularly in marketing. I can definitely speak from experience. So am I saying that, shares on your most recent blog post aren't important? Well, no. But if we don't back up to put our blog within the context of this larger customer experience we're creating, we're doing our customers and our business a disservice, obviously. It's so easy to drown in data. We think we're doing the right thing by tracking all the things, but with all of it combined, meaning quickly escapes us, or worse, we create these complex workflows referred to as ping pong by Ed Fry at hall.io to try to be all the things to everyone. Instead, if we've defined our customer milestones, taking into account their motivations, objections, and outside influences, then we can determine meaningful measurement. So sometimes when you're building a customer journey and defining milestones, you'll use your existing metrics if you find that they demonstrate a customer achieving their goal. That's totally fine. But oftentimes you'll realize that you need to define an entirely new KPI. I see this a lot with adoption and engagement stages. So teams will realize through this exercise that the metrics that they've been using so far are totally piecemeal, and a more meaningful way to measure success is needed. When we were looking for a KPI when someone became a customer and therefore truly ending the evaluation phase, we traced our best fit, happiest customers back to the moment when they first became a customer and used their success, them achieving their goals, to help us measure ours. So it wasn't payment source added, it became a KPI that we referred to as adopted, which we defined as paid us at least twice, combined with minimum product usage, like certain features, a minimum amount of traffic being sent, and integrations, let's say. This is how we knew that we had done our job. Now, this is a bit tangential, but bear with me for a second. When we launched Forget the Funnel a year and a half ago, since then, we've been asking SaaS marketers what they struggle with the most. We've heard from hundreds of people at this point, both marketers and founders. But what the marketers have told us repeatedly is that they don't feel trusted by their CEO and that they struggle to gain buy-in for their ideas. Interestingly, they also tell us that while they want to be thinking more strategically, which would arguably gain them more trust and buy-in from their bosses, they also lacked direction and support to do that. Tools like customer experience mapping can fill that void. It can give your team a framework and free them to do their best work in a way that's measurable and meaningful and collaborative. Your team needs a framework with which to understand larger customer goals, of course, but also the role that they each play in helping your customers achieve their goals. The depressing results from Forrester's 2018 CX Index continues to show that companies are struggling to create and sustain a human connection with their customers. Victor Milligan, Forrester CMO, saying companies need to take the big leap from viewing customers through this macro lens of subscriber, user, persona, to viewing a customer as a single sentient human being and then operationalizing that view. That is exactly what this process of customer experience mapping is meant to do. So we have this famous Bain study that has been referenced all over the place about how to achieve true customer-led growth. And it found that out of 362 companies surveyed, 80% believe they were delivering a superior customer experience. But the study, though dated, lives on in memory because the study also found that only 8% of customers felt the same way. You cannot let this be you. Customer experience mapping serves your customers, of course. Their experiences with you become more meaningful, more relevant, more cohesive messaging and voice and tone. And since it's so focused on their success, it's obviously more valuable to them as well. For your team, your customer experience mapping helps build empathy for your customers, of course, but it also helps clarify departments' focus, like marketing versus customer success versus sales, for example. It highlights handoff opportunities, and it paves the way for journey-wide, cross-department, and cross-functional initiatives. Your overall strategy is now honed in on customers' success. It demonstrates the breadth or potential for post-acquisition customer marketing and engagement and expansion. And it sheds light on success gaps or leaks and optimization opportunities and paves the way for deeper strategic work. So for instance, nested journey maps tied to all kinds of things like feature launches or running campaign experiments or breaking into new markets. For your business, it creates big picture context for the entire company to rally around. It provides everyone a central and shared understanding. It creates shared language and naming conventions, which makes talking about your customers and planning so much easier. It also helps define meaningful KPIs for most of the teams in your company, so holding everyone more accountable for their role in your customer's experience. Now, I realize I've glossed over what can be quite an involved process. So if you have any questions about customer experience mapping or training for your team, don't hesitate to get in touch. You can find me at abettercx.com or reach out by email. Also, if you're interested in SaaS marketing workshops, check out forgetthefunnel.com. And I wish you all a fantastic afternoon. Thanks so much.